Shocking 1,000-pound sisters moment as Tammy worries when Amy faces a frightening emergency. Hospital now. The fluorescent lights of the waiting room hummed a sterile, indifferent tune, a stark contrast to the chaotic symphony of beeping monitors and hurried footsteps that echoed from the hallway beyond the double doors. It was a place of suspended animation, where time seemed to stretch and compress in equal measure, where the loudest sounds were often the unspoken fears hanging heavy in the air. For the Slaton family, a clan accustomed to the dramatic, often messy, theater of their daily lives, this particular hospital waiting room had become a stage for their most terrifying performance yet. Tammy Slaton sat, or more accurately, existed, in a chair that was far too small for her frame. It was a constant, physical reminder of the world's inability to accommodate her, a reality she usually met with defiance. But today, the familiar irritation was replaced by something far more chilling, a deep, gnawing worry that had settled in her bones like a winter chill. Her oxygen cannula, a permanent fixture now, was a constant whisper of her own mortality, but the fear she felt wasn't for herself. It was for her sister, Amy, who was somewhere on the other side of those imposing doors, facing a frightening emergency. The scene was set. It was a moment ripped from the raw, unfiltered narrative of their lives, a moment where the weight of their combined struggles, both literal and metaphorical, threatened to crush them. This wasn't a storyline for a television show. This was life and death, love and fear, playing out in real time. The seemingly unshakable, fiercely independent Tammy was cracking, her armor of sarcasm and bravado chipping away with every passing second. This was the shocking heart of the matter. The patient, often a source of worry for the family, was now the one consumed by worry for another. The cause of this crisis was, in the grand, tragicomic tapestry of the Slaton family, both a shock and, in a way, entirely predictable. A simple, seemingly innocent craving, a desire for a taste of the outside world, had spiraled into a terrifying medical emergency for Amy. The specifics were murky, whispered about in anxious phone calls and frantic text messages that had pulled the family together in this sterile, frightening place. But one thing was clear: Amy, pregnant and navigating the treacherous waters of a high-risk pregnancy following her own weight loss surgery, was in serious trouble. The woman who had always been the rock, the voice of reason, the one who tried so desperately to keep Tammy on track and the family together, was now the one fighting a battle behind closed doors. And Tammy, left alone with her thoughts and her fears, was forced to confront a terrifying possibility: a life without her sister. It was a thought so profound, so paralyzing, that it rendered her speechless, a rare occurrence for the famously outspoken woman. The weight of the situation, both the immediate crisis and the years of shared history, pressed down on her. Her mind, usually a defense mechanism of quick wit and deflection, was instead replaying a montage of their lives. She saw them as little girls, two peas in a pod, navigating a world that often seemed cruel and unforgiving. She remembered the bullies and how Amy, despite being younger, would stand up for her. She remembered the late-night talks, the whispered dreams of a future where they were normal, where they could fit into any chair, walk down any aisle, and live without the constant judgment of others. Their journey had always been intertwined, a single, shared narrative of struggle, resilience, and an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of their unique existence. The dream of losing weight, of getting bariatric surgery, was always a shared one, a pact to finally take control of their lives and chase the things they'd been denied for so long. Now, Amy had achieved so much of that dream. She was a mother, a role she had always craved. She had a husband, Michael, and a beautiful son, Gage. She was building the life she had always wanted, a life that Tammy, despite her own battles, was fiercely proud of and protective over. But Amy's path to motherhood had been a dangerous one. Getting pregnant only 4 months after her gastric bypass surgery had been a direct defiance of doctors' orders, a decision that had turned her pregnancy into a ticking time bomb. Her doctors had warned her, her family had worried, and now, All those fears were manifesting in the most terrifying way possible. Tammy's mind drifted back to the earlier season episodes, to the arguments, the therapy sessions, the constant friction, and the blame game that often characterized their relationship. They had fought about everything: food, Tammy's refusal to stick to her diet, Amy's frustration and fear that she was losing her sister to her addiction. But it was always born from a place of love, a frantic, desperate love that manifested as anger because they didn't know how else to show how terrified they were of losing each other. A particularly sharp, painful memory surfaced. It was a comment Tammy had made, a flippant, cruel remark about Amy's emergency room visit for what had turned out to be a severe case of indigestion. This B***TCH went to the ER for Chinese food? She had scoffed, her words laced with disbelief and a hint of judgment. At the time, it had been a source of dark humor, a quintessential Tammy moment of calling out what she perceived as Amy's dramatic tendencies. But now, sitting in this very hospital, the irony was so sharp it cut deep. Now, Amy was back in the emergency room, and the cause was anything but funny. Now, Tammy would give anything for this to be a false alarm, for it to be another case of indigestion, for her to be able to make that same joke and have Amy roll her eyes and laugh it off. The memory of her own callous words twisted in her gut like a knife, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the cruel, unexpected nature of how our own words can come back to haunt us. Her brother Chris, the family's pillar of strength, paced the linoleum floor. His face was etched with worry, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. He had been the one to drive Amy here, his hands steady on the wheel even as his heart raced. He was the brother who had always tried to be the peacemaker, the one who had also made the life-altering decision to undergo weight loss surgery himself, driven by the same fear of premature death that haunted them all. He knew the stakes, he had seen what this addiction to food did to people. He was fighting his own battle, trying to lose weight and get healthy, and seeing Amy, who had been so successful, lying in a hospital bed, was a blow that shook him to his core. "I can't believe this," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. She was fine, and then... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The fear in his voice was enough. Tammy looked at him, his face a mirror of her own internal turmoil. It was a stark reminder of the family's constant state of crisis, a cycle of hope and relapse, progress and setback. They were a family on the edge, perpetually one bad decision away from a catastrophe. Tammy's mind, unable to stay still, began to spiral. It was a catastrophic chain of what-ifs. What if the baby was in danger? What if Amy's body, already under immense strain, couldn't handle it? What if this was the moment the doctors had been warning them about? The thought was so terrifying, so absolute, that a raw sob escaped her lips, a sound that was foreign and shocking coming from the woman who so often presented herself as invulnerable. Tam, Misty, another sister, rushed to her side. Hey, it's okay. She's going to be fine. Amy's a fighter." Misty's words were meant to be comforting, but they felt hollow. They had all seen too much, lost too much. The specter of death was a constant, unwelcome guest in their lives. They had mourned the loss of their father. They had watched their own bodies wage war against them, and they had seen the toll it took on each other. The fear wasn't abstract. It was a terrifyingly real possibility. The Slaton family had been through so much together. They had faced Tammy's own health scares, her near-death experience with COVID-19 that had left her reliant on constant oxygen. They had seen her quit breathing, watched as her body shut down, and felt the visceral terror of almost losing her. They had rallied around her, just as they were now rallying around Amy. But this was different. This was Amy, the one who had always been the healthier of the two, the one who had seemingly made it out. The juxtaposition was jarring and profoundly unsettling. Tammy's thoughts drifted to the psychic they had seen in a previous episode, a woman who had given them both disturbing news. Tammy had been so focused on her own impending doom, the warnings about her own health, that she had barely registered the potential foreshadowing for Amy. Now, the psychic's words echoed in her mind, filled with a new, terrifying meaning. The family had rallied together then, trying to help Tammy lose weight, trying to prevent the future they all feared. Now, they were trying to prevent a different kind of tragedy, one that threatened the very heart of their family unit. "This is my fault," Tammy whispered, the words barely audible. It was a confession, a burden she had been carrying silently for years. "I put so much stress on her. All those fights. All the times I wouldn't listen." Chris stopped his pacing and knelt in front of her. "No, Tam. Don't you do that. Don't you put this on yourself. This isn't your fault." "You don't understand, Chris," Tammy insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I'm the reason she's always stressed. I'm the reason she's always worried. I've been so selfish, always thinking about myself, always making her take care of me. And now," her voice broke again. "Now, she's in there, and I can't do anything to help her." It was a rare moment of vulnerability, a glimpse into the profound guilt that Tammy carried. She was aware, on some level, of the burden she placed on her family, particularly Amy. The constant worry, the arguments about her diet, the fear that her own self-destructive behavior was hastening her own demise and causing immense pain to those who loved her. The therapist had tried to get them to see it, to communicate better, but old habits were hard to break. Now, in the crucible of this emergency, all the repressed guilt and fear came flooding out. This is what made the moment so shocking. Not just the medical emergency, but the emotional earthquake it triggered within the family. Tammy, the eternal patient, the one who always needed to be rescued, was now in the role of the terrified caregiver. She was helpless, and for someone who fought so hard against her own powerlessness, it was a devastating blow. She was being forced to confront the very real possibility that Amy, the person who had been her lifeline, her cheerleader, and her best friend, might not always be there. The long minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The waiting room, with its overly bright lights and its scent of antiseptic, had become a pressure cooker of emotion. The family clung to each other, drawing strength from their shared fear. They whispered prayers, shared memories of happier times, and tried to reassure each other with words they didn't fully believe. Finally, after an eternity, the double doors swung open. A doctor emerged, his face unreadable. The family rose as one, a wave of anxiety washing over them. Tammy struggled to her feet, her breath catching in her throat. This was it. The moment of truth. The moment that would define the rest of their lives. "Family of Amy Halterman?" the doctor asked. The doctor's expression softened slightly. He saw the terror in their eyes, the desperate hope that they were clinging to. "Amy is stable," he began, and a collective sigh of relief rippled through the group. "She's a fighter. We were able to stabilize her, and she's resting now. But we need to keep her for observation. Her pregnancy is high risk, and this was a serious scare." "What happened?" Misty asked, her voice trembling. The doctor explained the details. The issue, as feared, was a complication related to her pregnancy and her previous surgery, something that had caused severe pain and put both her and the baby at risk. It was a reminder of the delicate balance Amy had been walking, the constant danger that had been lurking beneath the surface of her dream come true. "We're going to keep a close eye on her," the doctor assured them. "For now, she needs rest. You can see her, but only 2 at a time. She's tired, but she's going to be okay." Tammy pushed forward, her desire to see her sister overriding everything else. "I need to see her. Please, I need to see my sister." Chris put a hand on her shoulder. "Okay, Tam. You and I will go first. Just take it easy in there." Slowly, carefully, they made their way through the hallway and into Amy's room. The sight of her in the hospital bed, pale and connected to monitors, was gut punch. But she was awake. She was alive. And when her eyes met Tammy's, a weak but genuine smile crossed her face. "Hey, Tam," Amy whispered, her voice hoarse. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Tammy's composure shattered. She let out a sob, a mix of relief and exhaustion. "You scared the hell out of me, Amy. Don't ever do that again." "I'm okay," Amy insisted, though the lie was evident in the exhaustion that clung to her. "The baby's okay. That's all that matters." "Don't you say that," Tammy snapped, her voice thick with emotion. You matter too. You matter more than anything. The words were raw, unguarded, a far cry from the usual sarcastic banter that often defined their interactions. In this sterile, terrifying room, the love between them was stripped bare of all pretense. The weight of their shared history, the struggles, the fights, the hopes, and the dreams, all coalesced into this one singular moment of profound connection. The shocking emergency had, in its terrifying way, brought them back to the fundamental truth of their relationship. They were sisters, and nothing, not even the threat of death, could sever that bond. The hospital room was quiet now, save for the steady beeping of the monitors that tracked Amy's vitals. The fluorescent lights had been dimmed, casting a soft, almost peaceful glow over the space. But there was nothing peaceful about the turmoil churning inside Tammy Slaton as she sat in the chair beside her sister's bed, her massive frame barely contained by the reinforced hospital furniture. Amy had drifted off to sleep, her face slack with exhaustion, the lines of pain that had been etched across her features finally softening into something resembling rest. The doctors had administered medication to help with the pain, and to ensure she got the rest she desperately needed. The baby, they had assured the family, was fine. A resilient little fighter who seemed determined to make it into the world despite all the odds stacked against them. Tammy couldn't sleep. Her mind was a battlefield, a chaotic landscape of regret, fear, and a desperate, overwhelming love that threatened to consume her. She watched Amy's chest rise and fall with each breath, counting each one as if it might be her last. The oxygen cannula that had become such a permanent fixture in Tammy's own life was now a temporary visitor in Amy's room, a stark reminder of how quickly everything could change. You really scared us, you know that? Tammy whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the machines. I thought I was gonna lose you. Amy stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Tammy reached out, her thick fingers brushing against Amy's hand. It was such a simple gesture, but for Tammy, it was monumental. Physical affection had never come easily to her, a defense mechanism built over years of being hurt, judged, and rejected by the world. But in this moment, she needed to feel the warmth of her sister's skin, to reassure herself that Amy was still here, still fighting. The door opened softly, and Chris poked his head in. His eyes, still red-rimmed from earlier tears, met Tammy's. How is she? Sleeping, Tammy replied, her voice hoarse. The doctor said she needs rest. Chris nodded, slipping into the room and taking a seat on the other side of Amy's bed. He looked exhausted, the weight of the day's events etched into every line of his face. He had been the one to drive Amy to the hospital, his hands steady on the wheel even as his heart raced with fear. He was the rock, the one everyone leaned on, but even rocks could crack under enough pressure. I can't believe this happened, Chris said, running a hand over his face. She was doing so good. She had lost all that weight, she had gauged, she was happy. And now this. Tammy nodded, her eyes never leaving Amy's face. She pushed herself too hard. She was trying to do everything at once. Be a mom, be a wife, be healthy. And she was doing it all for everyone else. For me. Her voice cracked on the last word. I know what we talked about, Tammy interrupted, her voice sharper than she intended. But it's the truth.
She was always worried about me.
Always trying to take care of me. And I took, and I never gave anything back. Chris leaned forward, his expression earnest. That's not true, and you know it. You've been there for her too. When she was going through her divorce, when she was struggling with her weight, you were there. You're her sister, Tammy. That means something. Tammy shook her head, tears welling in her eyes again. It's not enough. It's never been enough. I've been so selfish. All those fights, all those times I said horrible things to her because I was angry at myself. I hurt her, Chris. I hurt her so many times. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with years of unspoken guilt. Chris reached across the bed and took Tammy's hand, his grip firm and reassuring. We've all hurt each other.